Hey folks, this is Rhykker, and Diablo 4 Season 11 has some big changes coming. Tempering and Masterworking overhaul, a new special seasonal crafting mechanic, a new challenging leaderboard activity, and more. And we've got some devs from the Diablo 4 team here with us to talk about all this and answer our questions. But first, a quick round of introductions.
Well, hey everybody, my name is Owen Leach. I'm the Seasons Lead on Season 11, and I'm also the lead encounter designer on Diablo 4.
Hey guys, I'm Aislinn Hall. I'm a systems designer on Diablo 4, working specifically on the final design team, and I typically work on seasons.
Hey everybody, I'm Art Peshkov. I'm the lead systems designer on Diablo 4.
And if anyone finds Art Peshkov's name familiar, where are my D3 players at? Because the Eye of Peshkov monk item that was named after you, you've been on Team 3 quite a while, haven't you?
Yeah, I have.
Way back. All right, folks, and right after this video finishes, you can go ask your questions to these three individuals. They'll be on the Sanctuary Discord, again, to answer any follow-up questions as soon as this is no longer live. And right now, folks, you can be farming Twitch drops until October 17th at 11 a.m. PDT by watching 30 minutes of anyone live streaming in the Diablo 4 category on twitch.tv. So now, right off the bat, tempering, this has been a hot topic in the community for quite a while. People, I've mentioned it a couple times in my videos, the topic of bricking items and resetting tempering. So what is the good word on tempering?
Oh, I mean, I've been right there with you, sitting there bricking my 3 GAs and crying in town. Well, I guess the the good news is that you're no longer going to be able to brick your items with tempering, right? The kind of the big change that we'd like to highlight is that tempering recipes no longer roll from a pool of affixes. You get to just directly pick the affix that you want. It's still going to roll within a range, but yeah, you just get to deterministically pick whatever affix you want, put it on your item. To account for this kind of increase in determinism, we're lowering the max number of tempered affixes from 2 to 1, but we're also removing the limit on resetting tempers. So currently you can only do it once, but you'll be able to reset as many times as you want. And to account for the fact that we've removed a tempering affix, we're adding one more base affix back to non-unique items into the pool. So you're not down in affix in terms of raw item power.
There you go. So right off the bat, this is, I'm sure you've just made a lot of people very, very happy. And alongside this, right, Masterworking, people were been complaining about having to reset at 12 and the cost of, they're trying to get their triple crits. We got a huge overhaul to Masterworking. It is basically just Masterworking in name only now. How does Masterworking work as of Season 11?
Right. So yeah, we've completely redone the way Masterworking works. At a high level, Masterworking is no longer going to increase an item's affix values, and the 12 discrete stages are gone. So like no more 5% to all affixes, 25% to one affix stuff. That's completely gone. Instead, you can kind of conceptualize Masterworking in 3 different stages. The first stage is the quality stage. When you Masterwork an item, you're going to apply a new stat to it called quality. You're going to apply a random amount every time you masterwork. And what quality does is it just gives a multiplicative bonus to the base stat of an item. So for weapons, it's the damage. For armor, it's the armor. And for your jewelry, it's the resist all. Items can be masterworked up to a maximum quality threshold, which is 20%. And once you've hit that 20% quality, you're done with this part of masterworking. So as an example, if you have a 1000 DPS weapon, you quality it all the way up to max, you'll have a 1200 DPS weapon. Once you're done with that, you can masterwork your item one more time, and we like to call this the Masterworking Capstone. And what this does is it just GAs a non-GA affix on your item, right? And this can hit tempered affixes too, by the way, so your weapon tempers. And once you've done this Masterworking Capstone, we allow you to re-roll the specific affix that was GA'd for a cost, of course, but you're able to re-roll the Masterworked GA without resetting the quality level back to 0.
So all we're doing is now resetting the capstone as opposed to having to build it all the way back up. Masterwork 1, 2, 3, 4. Pray to get the 3
right,
crits on the right affix.
Yeah, no more waiting for the cosmos to align and being like 750,000 gold or million gold down and not getting what you want.
So the cost of trying again on that capstone, roughly how is that going to compare to the cost of resetting your 12 rank masterwork? Is it going to be more, less, about the same?
Well, it's going to be significantly easier. Like we're still kind of landing on the final cost, but in terms of probability, right? If you think about the old system, if you're masterworking a legendary item, you have a 20% chance to get the affix that you want, and you have to do this 3 times, right? So I think it's 25 masterwork resets on average to get a double crit, and 125 to get a triple crit, right? With the new system, hitting the affix that you want is significantly easier, right? So if you take a 1 GA item in the new system, right, and you try to masterwork it, you have a 1 out of 4 chance of hitting the affix that you want. So statistically, like you're gonna get it. You have a 99% chance of getting it within like 10 or 11 resets. So it's gonna be much, much easier. The other cool thing about this system is that like the better quality your item is, the easier it is to do this, right? Because if you go in there with a 1 GA, it's a 1 out of 4. But if you go in there with a 3 GA, it's only 1 out of 2.
Bingo. Awesome. Now, prior to Season 4 and the introduction of Masterworking and Tempering, we did have a crafting system that I think operated kind of similar, at least prior to the capstone, where I think we were like 10 discrete steps of, was it increasing item power, I believe, or item level?
Yeah, there's some similarities to the old system. You're right in that you were able to upgrade it. I can't remember how many discrete steps. Was it 5 or 10? But it would increase the item power, which had some other kind of side effects in our system, right? In terms of scaling affix values, and it was really kind of an enclosed system. This kind of is a much more elegant version, and we think quality is really cool, and we might find other applications for it in the future as well.
Yeah, I think it's also like a system with a much longer possibility space of, or like being able to make an item even cooler and stronger than before, certainly with the system that existed before Season of Blue Reborn. So you'll have way more space to like turn an item into something so much more powerful than what it was. So yeah.
All right. Now, again, tempering, masterworking, these have been topics that the community has been discussing for, a year plus, and something that you folks keep, reiterating in the dev streams is, feedback. We're listening to feedback. And for those paying attention and following along, we do see, 6 months or 12 months later, feedback does get implemented. But to some people, it might give the perception of, oh, well, they're not actually listening to feedback. Why do we feel it could be so long between feedback and implementation or acting from your part?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it really just comes down to the fact that we want to be really sure that we're making the right changes. We don't want to be making quick fixes or knee-jerk reactions, especially when it comes to like these core foundational systems. I feel like, when you are touching systems like this, you really have to like measure a bunch of times before you cut. It'd be pretty irresponsible to kind of like, let's rework tempering based on the whim and ebb and flow of like one particular season's meta or something like that, right? So,
yeah, I also think it just highlights the importance of the upcoming PTR and why it's so great to get your feedback now, because, hey, maybe we hit the mark, maybe we didn't, right? And the only way for us to know that is for folks to play it and give us that feedback, which is so helpful.
Now, that's not the only crafting things happening. For Season 11 specifically, we got a new crafting mechanic, Sanctification. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, Sanctification is really cool. So ultimately, Sanctification is kind of like your last big swing at making your item super cool. It sits at the very end of the item journey, and really, you kind of get one shot to make your item as awesome as possible. There's a lot of variance in the system, but once you sanctify your item, you get one of a number of random things that can happen to it, and then that item is done. Like you can't modify it any further at all. You can't enchant it, you can't temper it, you can't masterwork it. The only thing that we're going to let you do is swap out the socketables in a sanctified item. But the sanctification properties can be very, very, very powerful.
So this is sort of like it's a one-time slam. You're gambling to complete this item, and you're hoping for one of those multiple outcomes. What are some of the most exciting outcomes that people can get?
Oh man, well I think the grand prize is you can get an additional legendary power on your item, and this can be a legendary, this could be a unique, or this could be a mythic, right? Like you could get some pretty insane outcomes in that regard. There's a bunch of other really cool stuff, but I'll highlight an example from a recent playthrough that I had. I was playing a Hydrasork, and I slammed an amulet, and I got Orange Herald on it. So I was like, oh, okay, this is great. This is like utterly amazing. And I used it for the next like 30 levels. So
awesome. And to sanctify, we're going to be using a resource called Heavenly Sigils. Is that right?
Right. So Heavenly Sigils are used to sanctify endgame items as I Power 750s and Ancestrals. Pre-Torment, there will be a slightly different loop where you earn a chance to sanctify your items when you complete activities. But once you're in Torment, you'll earn these sigils, which you will be able to kind of bank up and use whenever you want to sanctify stuff whenever you want.
So this is a consumable item, and do we get it via a drop? Are we earning it via an activity?
Both. Well, it's used as a crafting currency. You can also use it in your inventory to teleport to the place where you do sanctification. It's a little quality of life thing. But yeah, you're earning it as a material. There are a few guaranteed sources of heavenly sigils. I think they are Bartok, Giga Belial, the ultimate layer boss Belial, and then Astaroth. We also have a few chance-based sources, including the Belial Ambush and the Seasonal Pit Belial. I think there's a low chance to drop off of elites and Nightmare Dungeon bosses as well.
So we're going to be a lot more powerful in Season 11 thanks to the new Sanctification crafting system, but the game is also getting more challenging via an overhaul to monster combat. Do you want to tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're calling it Evolve Monster Combat. And at its core is we're taking a look holistically at the monsters in our game and seeing that, from where we started in base game to where we are now, monsters really haven't changed that much. So it's about bringing our monsters up to speed with the speed of the player and changing a lot about each of our individual monsters, but focusing on hit reliability and overall pacing in general of base combat. So that comes from improved monster AI. It comes to more distinct roles for our monsters. Their ability to hit you is a lot more reliable. Like they turn to face you more. It's harder to dodge. You can't just run through mobs and survive anymore. Getting surrounded has meaning. And then we're also doing a lot of work around monster rarities. So, our base monster rarities, you got your normal monsters. Then we have minions, champions, and elites. And then there's a couple other super elites, unique elites. But those are the ones we're focusing on. So elites previously were kind of a slightly harder unit. They had a few affixes on them. And maybe when you fought them, you took notice. Maybe you just kind of wiped them off the face of the planet and didn't even notice. But now we're boosting the difficulty of those encounters fairly considerably. So before you might have a single monster show up, or single elite, maybe two elites show up at a given time, and they've got 2-3 affixes on them. But now what happens is when an elite rolls, you'll get one large monster, the elite, and he will spawn with 5 minions, and all of those monsters will share affixes. So you'll have a pack of 6 monsters throwing mortar at you, throwing frozen at you, throwing all sorts of affixes at you at the same time. So that's going to represent a meaningful increase in difficulty, and with that, we're also going to sort of adjust the pacing a little bit. So you're not going to run into elite back to back to back to back, because that would just make the whole game harder. But it's about creating a meaningful spike in difficulty that gets you out of your chair and take notice, right? So you don't sort of just space out and smoke everything. So harder elite encounters, but less often, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. So, currently we kind of play the game on 2 speeds. There's speed farming, which at endgame, where there's speed farming where we're mowing through things, and there's like kind of pit pushing where we're testing our metal and the combat does slow down. Do you anticipate we're going to feel, or is the design intent for us to feel these changes just like when we're pit pushing, or also just when we're speed farming? I
think, since we touched every single monster and all their behaviors are different, you will feel them everywhere. I think we made meaningful changes to a lot of different monster families. To quote Art, this is Diablo, and you can outmath monsters, so you can be strong enough. If you're 2 difficulties higher than you or lower than you probably should be, you're just gonna wipe the screen, and that's fine. That's part of the fun, right? You got your character that strong. But yeah, when you're pushing and you don't have that, you will 100% feel it. So I would say it's unavoidable. No matter what, you're gonna run into this, and hopefully it'll make combat more fun for everybody. And the AI and behavioral changes to the monsters, is that something that ramps up with difficulty, or are we feeling it from level 1? You will feel the sort of more intelligence in their behavior from level 1, but there are certain aspects of monsters that will increase as Torment goes up. Things like move speed, attack speed, their ability to target you intelligently, like with their aiming and things like that. They're all based on a system that increases as difficulty tiers go up. But the baseline behaviors of like, oh, okay, they know not to group up, they know to flank you, they know to spread out. Like that's going to be everywhere.
And speaking about the champions and elites specifically, if you can give some measure to like how much more challenging there are, like by some factor compared to how they've been.
Sure. It's hard to quantify because it varies greatly depending on the difficulty that you're at. We want to increase the difficulty for higher world tiers because that's, the players who are very skilled at the game and have been practicing that sort of thing, but we don't really want to push it that much higher for the new players. So I wouldn't consider it exponentially more difficult or anything like that on normal, intentionally so. But as you get going, when you would fight one elite, now you're fighting 6 things with affixes. I don't want to say it's 6 times more difficult or anything like that, but somewhere in the 3 to 4 times more difficult range, just based on the number of elites or monsters with affixes that show up. Not only that, but we're also increasing the number of affixes that roll on minions and elites as the world tiers go up. So when you get to Torment 1, an elite will have 4 affixes, where previously they might have only had 3, and minions can possibly roll up to 4 if you get really unlucky. Certain affixes do get inherited, some do not, just because the nature of certain affixes are much louder. Like you wouldn't want, 6 things casting Orbiter. That means nothing because nobody's seen Orbiter, but it's a new affix that's really exciting. Maybe you remember it from D3. It'll definitely ramp and get much more difficult in the higher difficulty tiers, but still be manageable in the lower difficulty tiers.
Yeah, so I think the difficulty of any individual group of elites you run across is going to vary depending on the combinatorics of what your build is exceptionally good at dealing with and what they roll. And, sometimes you're probably going to come across a group and they're going to have a combination that just destroys you. And you're going to be super surprised, or, maybe you won't. Maybe you've seen it before and you're ready for it. And that's where part of the mastery comes in.
Yeah, and I think what Aislinn is hitting on is one of our philosophies going into Evolved Monster Combat was creating memorable moments. So I was playing through Season 11 the other day, just testing out the PTR's build, and I was running through Helltide, and I turned the corner, and there was an elite giant maggot who's a new monster in Season 11, and he had 5 giant maggot minions, and they just beat the bejesus out of me. So I was just getting my ass kicked, and I'm like, no, F this, I'm out. And I start running, and then Vortex, one of the elite affixes, just sucked me right back into him. And I'm like, oh my God. And like that, it's funny. It's this small moment, but it was like so memorable to me. And I was like, I got on chat and just bragged to the designers about how great a job they did making that, and it was just a really cool thing. So that's what we're kind of hoping for folks, is to create, with all these crazy random elements that can roll, sometimes you're going to get one that's like, holy crap, that just happened. And I think that's part of the fun of it.
I think one of the key takeaways here is that this is an increase in difficulty that is not just bigger numbers. It's not that they deal more damage, they have more life. It is the affixes, it is the AI. You've name dropped a couple new affixes. How many new monster affixes roughly are we getting?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite things being Encounter Lead is we haven't added monster affixes at all until this point, and we're adding 20 plus. I think we're going into PTR with 25 new monster affixes. Some are totally new, you never seen them before, and some are inspired by the D3 ones that you might know and love. So seeing some of your returning favorites come back should hopefully be fun for fans of those games.
Fantastic.
I've definitely been melted by fire chains.
Yeah, fire chains is one of them. Lifelink, it's another D3 one. There's a couple of them. Yeah.
Fire chains. My nemesis. Sorry, I'm just getting flashbacks.
Now, speaking of affixes, do you guys have opinions on like damage reduction affixes?
Sure. So the champions in pre-season 11, as you probably remember, had the damage resist aura. So if you're not familiar with that, folks, it's the big glowing purple aura around the dude, and it provides DR to everybody around it. We actually took that out entirely. Champions don't do that anymore. And we'll talk about what they are now, and then I'll talk about why we took it out. So what they are now is they will spawn in packs. So you'll get packs of champions, either 3 or 5, and they will have their own monster affixes as well. So they'll pull from that same pool that elites pull from, except they'll also have affixes that are specific to champions. Lifelink is one. Again, that's a D3 one if you remember. Fire Chains is one. We have one called Vengeance, where if you kill one member, the rest gets stronger. So they'll have their own unique behaviors, and they'll fill their own unique combat role. They're gonna probably be equally difficult to elites. That's sort of our target. It'll just be a different flavor of combat. So instead of like a single targeting thing or managing a group, it's just now it's group dynamic stuff. So So now to the previous part. How do I feel about damage resist? We took it out. We took it out specifically because the champion aura was fundamentally a single targeting check, and that's not how most people play Diablo. We don't often do single target builds. A lot of people just dump a bunch of AoEs. So when you're just dumping a bunch of AoEs, that doesn't actually create any sort of meaningful combat. It doesn't change up your behavior in any way. It's just this fight lasts slightly longer, and that's not something that we find value in, right? So we'd rather have you be challenged in a fun and engaging way of things you need to dodge or whatever. But that's kind of why we took it out, and I don't know many people will miss it.
No.
Awesome. Great to hear. Now we're also getting, I don't know if this is going to be more difficult or less difficult, and I think we're going to need help understanding exactly the significance of this change, but we're getting massive changes to defenses, right?
Right, yeah. We're kind of really, with the increased power you'll be able to get through the new crafting system and the increased challenges that you'll be taking on with the harder monsters, we really wanted to kind of evaluate the state of like player defenses and healing and player damage reduction. Because really, if you think about it, like there's a pretty huge disparity in effective HP when you look across builds, right? Like some builds will have like 10k HP and then they proc their stuff and they go up to 200,000. It's wild. And this creates a lot of difficulty in kind of tuning the game up to be more difficult as you progress. And it also creates a lot of confusion for the player into understanding, like, how did all these layers of defenses actually work? Like, how tanky am I? ? So we've reworked a couple things. Starting at the top, we're changing armor and resistance to be rating systems, which means that you can continue to invest in these for more and more damage reduction, but they have diminishing returns at higher values. We're also changing armor from being a source of physical damage reduction to being a layer of all damage reduction. So it's not just against the physical damage type, it's against all damage types. To pair with that change, we're adding a new resistance type called physical resistance, right? So you'll go from having 5 elemental resistances to now having 6 resistances with physical resist. And the kind of end goal here is that armor and resistance are your two primary defensive layers that you're kind of balancing against. The other thing that we've done is we've really evaluated the use of all of the various damage reduction affixes, right? There's unconditional damage reduction. There's like 20,000 flavors of conditional damage reduction. We found that this leads to a really inconsistent experience. Like, your buffs will fall off in mid pack, or you're going from pack to pack and suddenly you're like 7 times less tanky and you get one tapped, right? It just feels really bad. So we're really trying to kind of make defenses a lot more predictable and understandable. Largely, we've removed a lot of conditional DRs and made them non-conditional. So your defenses will be much more predictable. To kind of help the player understand all this, we've introduced a new thing on the character sheet called toughness. Toughness itself is not a real stat. It doesn't do anything for you, but toughness is a mathematical representation of your effective HP. So what it does is basically we calculate for you how much HP you have per damage type after your armor, after your resistances, and after any other sources of DR, so that you can look at this number and get a general sense of how tanky you are. And if you're like, you got a new piece of gear, you put it on. If you see that number go up, that means you're more tanky.
So just to ensure I'm understanding, does this mean that now armor and resistance no longer have a cap? The numbers just go higher and we like asymptotically approach 100% but never reach 100% damage reduction from resistance and armor?
Yeah, more or less.
So if I remember correctly, that's kind of the system we had at launch. And then we had like a rework in season 2 where resistances changed to being more like Diablo 2 style, where the cap is 70% and you can get 15% on your gear meant 15%, and then armor as well. Now we had the cap of 1,000, so it sort of introduced this itemization puzzle for us all to solve, where we know, okay, I only need 1,000 armor. How do I get it? I only need X amount of resistance. How do I get it? And I thought that change was really well received by the community. So why are we now moving away from that?
Right. So the system that we have right now created a few problems, namely for how we are able to scale up damage. If you think about, again, the HP disparity between some builds, we can't really reliably scale up damage past a certain point because some builds would start getting one shot while other builds wouldn't. This is largely because with a capped system, players, to get more tanky, players had to rely on all these other sources of various conditional DRs coming from your uniques and all that kind of stuff. Going back to a rating system is going to give us much more control. It's going to give you, the player, a lot more control on how you scale your defenses. Ultimately, the math behind this new system is a lot more sound and scalable for the future.
All right, fair enough. So does that mean we're also going to be seeing a great reduction in sources of damage reduction, like just across the board on items and Paragon and everything?
Yeah, in terms of like flat damage reduction, you are still going to see it. You're still going to see it on skills. You're still going to see it on like uniques and stuff like that. But we really want it to feel like more special than it is. Right? Like if you see something that says reduces damage taken by 30%, you should be like, oh my god, that's crazy. Not like, no, throw it in the pile, whatever, don't care.
Yeah, I think that's something that ended up happening and kind of building on itself and created, like, kind of turned into baggage in the current version of the game, which was I think for a while we didn't have a fantastic grasp of just how powerful these DR sources were going to turn out to be, and it ended up feeling like there was just like a bunch of arbitrary DR just kind of specced throughout the game, not necessarily very intentionally done. And now, like Art was saying, it should feel a lot more intentional when you do find something that gives you DR, because that is a very valuable thing to have.
Now, that's not the only side of defenses being reworked. We got healing, potions, that kind of stuff is also being revisited. What's going on there?
Yeah, so we wanted to look at the healing side of things along with the defensive side of things. For the potion, we kind of didn't really like the state of the potion, right? Your potion cap is so high, you're constantly getting them. So the net effect is that you just kind of spam your potion whenever you want it and need it. You're going, you're fine, you're taking damage, hit Q, instantly full, don't care, move on, right? We kind of, to go along with the more intentional monster combat and difficulty, we wanted your use of the potion to be a little bit more tactical. So we've the first thing we've done is we've removed the bonus potion charges that you can get from Renown. So you're gonna have a base of 4 potions, or a maximum of 4 potions. We've improved the potion healing itself. Right now, it's like this completely worthless flat heal and then a percentage-based heal over 4 seconds, I think. We've just made this a flat. A percentage-based instant heal, so you'll heal 35% of your max HP every time you push the button. And then we've also added a kind of a very, very slow potion regeneration. I think it's once every 30 seconds. This is really to kind of, if you're going from pack to pack and you find yourself out of potions, like, we don't want the right answer to be like, oh, I'm going to town portal so I can talk to my healer. So we're going to give you a slow trickle, so you can kind of keep moving forward. For the kind of other side of healing, we'd really like players to kind of spend a little bit more of their focus on kind of gearing defensively and for sustain as well. So we've made some improvements to life on hit. We've re-added that back into the affix pool. We've also tuned up all other sources, all other healing-based affixes like life on kill, life regen, healing percent. Those have been improved. Those have been made more available on different slots, with the intention that, like, you got to get some sustain somewhere. You can't just rely on your potion anymore.
So at this point, we're looking at effectively defenses 2.0. We're sort of like getting... we've had a number of systems reworked since the game launched, and now we're kind of getting reworks of reworks. Why is it that we're now, 2.5 years post-launch, and we're still overhauling core systems?
Yeah, well, I mean, Blizzard is really at its core. We're an iterative design studio. Feedback, both from our own experiences and especially player feedback, is kind of the lifeblood of what we do. Especially because Diablo 4 is a live game. We're constantly, adding things. We're constantly striving to improve our systems, broaden them, make them more deeper, and kind of. Systems are really a spider web of connections, right? Like cute Charlie Day with the red string meme. So it's kind of hard to add really cool new itemization systems like Sanctification without disrupting, or at the very least, like really taking a comprehensive look at the existing systems of itemization systems as a whole. And I think the reality with ARPGs, like these highly repetitive systems, do get stale. And there's kind of two major options, right? We can either build new systems, which run the risk of either bloating the game or making existing things kind of feel vestigial, or there's kind of refining old systems to address issues and feedback. Our focus has actually kind of been balancing between the two, right? And like you mentioned before, like itemization 2.0 has been out for like a year and a half, and has been relatively unchanged since season 4. We have a lot of feedback, we have a lot of data, and we feel like there's a lot of good iteration to be made and move the game in a very positive direction.
Yeah, to chime in, I think it's very easy to look at old systems, and I'm thinking about Monster Combat because that's my field, but it's very easy to be like, it's good enough, F it, right? But I think it's a point of pride that we take the time to look at these systems and identify, is this the best that it can be? And then spend the time to actually make it better. And it's just going to create a whole different feeling of freshness that's going to actually get players to come back, give a reason to come back for Season 11 and every season after. So the game is always changing, adapting to the flow, the pace, to the player base that's playing it. I think that's one of the best parts about being sort of an active live development all the time.
Yeah, speaking a little more to the culture of iteration, I've been a player of Diablo much longer than I've been working on Diablo, and I want to make sure that the game is as fun as possible, and I think that we all do here at the studio. And when we find opportunities to continue to improve Diablo 4, we want to take them, right? We don't want to rest on our laurels in that regard. We want to create something that not only the community loves to play, but we want to sit down and be like, hell yeah, let's log into Diablo 4.
All right, now, Sanctification is not the only thing coming with Season 11. Now, previously, in a past season, we saw the return of Belial, and now you guys are doing us not just one better, not just two better. We are seeing the return of Belial, the return of Duriel, the return of Andariel, and in fact, all 4 lesser evils. Lore nerds know who the 4th one is. We are seeing the return of, triumphantly from Diablo 3. Who's coming back?
Asmodan, right?
Asmodan.
Asmodunk.
Asmodunk.
He's dunking in.
Hold on,
So, what does it mean for the lesser evils to be invading Sanctuary?
Yeah, so the Lesser Evils are teaming up. Ultimate Bad Guy team up, and they're taking over Sanctuary. And what that means is each Lesser Evil is actually invading a different player activity. So to run it through, Andariel is taking over the Kurast Undercity. Belial is taking over the Pit. Duriel is taking over Helltide. Don't worry, it's the same color. And then Asmodan is a new world boss who's taking over the Overland. So yeah, that's our first new world boss is Asmodan since launch, right? So we're really, really excited about that. And once you see him, it's gonna blow your mind. He looks so good, and he fits so well as a world boss, just in his scale and his attacks, and I'm really, really excited for that. So I could dive more deep into each of those activities if you like, but the general gist of it is they are going to provide a new, interesting twist on the activity that you know. It's not going to fundamentally change it. The pit is still going to be the pit, but new things are going to happen. Belial will show up and throw attacks at you. Certain monsters in each activity are going to be infected with new affixes. So Belial's is the illusion affix, if you remember that one from D3, where it creates a bunch of clones of a monster, right? And then you'll have a chance to fight Belial as the boss of the pit instead of the regular old rotation of bosses, right? And that's the same for every activity. So Duriel is going to replace the Helltide Succubus boss, and Dariel is going to replace the Undercity bosses, Longtooth, and all the different ones we have there, and then Asmodan, like I said, will be that world boss.
And Asmodan being a world boss, that is going to be permanent, or that's just for the season?
So there's two flavors of that. Him as a world boss in the rotation of world bosses is permanent, so he will always be a world boss going forward. There is a separate seasonal event that is happening where he is actually going to take over an event, the World Boss Arena in Hawazar, and he will be kind of like an open world layer boss that you can fight with friends, if that makes sense. So how it actually works is you'll show up and there'll be sort of a ritual that you can take part in, and there will be 3 different altars, one for Andariel, one for Duriel, one for Belial. And depending on which one you choose, or whoever decides to choose, that will summon hordes of enemies in theme with that lesser evil. So let's say I pick Duriel. Sure. Maggots will start pouring out. We'll have zombies and this sort of thing. It'll be a giant wave event. And then after that giant wave event, Azmodan will show up, and he will be sort of influenced by Belial. So you'll fight Azmodan World Boss, but you'll also have a second layer of difficulty where you'll start seeing sort of Duriel's attacks. I think I just said Belial accident, but Duriel's attacks. So you'll start seeing Pangs of Duriel show up, or a bunch of poison meteors, stuff like that. And then when you kill him, this is kind of where it feels like a layer boss. We're going to spawn 3 different chests, and if you collect enough of what we're calling corrupted essences, which have a bunch of different uses in the season, you can cash that resource in to open a chest related to whichever lesser evil that you choose. So if you open, let's say, Andariel's chest, you'll have a chance to roll the uniques from Andariel's boss ladder fight, the layer fight, excuse me. You'll also get the resources that are associated with her in Season 11. Let me pull up which Andariel. I think I wrote these down so I wouldn't forget. She's Obols and Mats, and those tie into the seasonal gifts. But yeah, it'll be this fun 2 ways you can interact with it. The World Boss, and then the sort of recurring event in the Hawazar World Boss Arena that you can farm for all sorts of fun loot.
And you mentioned farming him with friends, so this is going to be a private instance, or is this something that like other people in the world will be alerted to?
It'll be open for everybody. Yep. So it'll always be up, and you can always run there and take part and fight. It won't be on a rotation or anything like that. It'll just be there for you to fight.
So a little bit like the Blood Maiden, where it's like if you don't have, if you don't have the materials and the end to open the chest, there's maybe not a big point in doing it over and over. But
correct.
If someone summons it, cool. Huh. And now you said that the Helltide's not changing color, but there are some changes to Helltide with Duriel's presence, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are changing up Helltide. Duriel's taking it over, right? So all the monsters are getting replaced. You're going to see zombies. You're going to see maggots, dregs, flies, all these different things. All the little pop-up events are going to be different theme with Duriel. He will replace the Blood Maiden. So instead of trading in your hearts and she shows up, we've been killing her for like 7 seasons straight. I think she needs a break. Duriel will pop up, and he's substantially more difficult. It'll certainly be a challenge to kill him, and it'll be a sort of fresh take on it. It will still be Helltide at its core, but it will definitely feel different with a lot more interesting challenges to it.
And then you hinted at this with the materials for summoning the world boss, but there's going to be purpose to going into these different activities, and I think that takes us to the divine gifts.
Yeah, so for the whole lore around this season is Hadriel, the angel from Diablo 2, if you don't remember Hadriel. Angels are freaking awesome, so we wanted to bring angels back as much as we can in a season. So Hadriel, who I always love from Diablo 2, he sits outside Chaos Sanctuary. He only says like 3 lines, but I was like, man, that guy's badass, just sitting outside of hell. So he's shown up, and he's been tracking Azmodan, and he has seen that the lesser evils are invading, and he wants to help. Unfortunately, that is not allowed by Imperius, and that we're trying to keep the balance. They vowed not to interfere with the goings-on of man, and he's going to try to break that. So in exchange for, he's basically putting a bounty on the lesser evils. So in exchange for you going and killing them, he's going to provide you divine gifts, and these divine gifts are sort of passive boosts to the rewards of the activities you take part in. And there's 2 levels. There's Purified, that will increase your rewards as well as provide you a sort of passive bonus to some of your stats or the rewards that you get. And then there's Corrupted effects. And these are for our more seasoned players, the players who want that hardened difficulty. This is sort of opt-in difficulty for different activities. So let's say I slot in a Corrupted Essence, I slot in a Divine Gift of Hadriel from, let's say, Belial, and I slot that into the Corrupted slot. the pit is now just harder. There are going to be effects that are topical to the pit, topical to Belial, that will pop up and make your run much harder. And this is the same for Helltide, Undercity, world bosses in general. So it allows you to make your content harder as well as boost the rewards that you get from it. So our seasons player, I think, will really enjoy that, and we'll have some more easily digestible powers for those folks who are not really interested in increasing the difficulty of the content.
About a year ago, more even, I think it was season 4, we had the introduction of Profane Mind Cages, which was a self opt-in difficulty buff to make monsters just numerically harder and get some numerical buff to reward. It seems like and again, people really like that and want it to come back. So now you're bringing it back in a way that is like 100 times more interesting, because it's not just, number bigger. It's, I think the through line of our chat today is the increase in difficulty is done in interesting ways. It's not just they deal more damage, they have more life. We're getting more, whether it's the AI, whether it's affixes and such. Because I think in some of these corrupted gifts, like you're getting more monster effects to spawn around you, or like ambushes happening on you.
Yep, 100%. And the Profane Mind Cage was a big inspiration. We saw folks love that, and we want to give avenues, again, to let the player play how they want. So they want harder stuff, and let's give it to them, but allow them to opt into that and allow it to be thematic and interesting. That's totally the way to go. And it's funny, you're talking about like sort of numbers go up. If we actually look at base monster damage, it's actually going down, but because of the hit reliability and the more intelligent things, you're just going to get hit by more things. And you're sort of, the better you play, the better you avoid it, and that increases your survivability. So we're getting away from, big spikes are the only way to kill people, and now getting surrounded or these new effects that you opt in for, that's really what's going to kill you, or this crazy bunch of affixes that happen to roll together, that's what's going to kill you. So it's a much more interesting way to increase difficulty or provide that increased pacing and flavor.
Fantastic. So if I'm understanding this right, there are going to be 4 categories of these divine gifts, one for each of the lesser evils, and you can slot it either into the corrupted or the is it purified? No.
That's correct, yeah. So there's Purified and Corrupted. You're going to have 8 perks for you to choose from, 8 gifts for you to choose from, and 8 slots. So if you wanted to, you can slot in every single one. And, depending on the choice becomes, do I put that in the Purified? Do I put that in the Corrupted? Which effects do I want? Which rewards do I want? And that becomes the fun sort of meta of the season of like, how do I optimize these things to get the experience that I want?
And by participating in any of these activities associated with that lesser evil, you're then leveling up your divine gifts in that related to that activity, right?
Yeah, that is exactly right. So you will gain experience for each of these gifts by killing the lesser evil associated with it, as well as the infected monsters within that activity. So I mentioned earlier, like the illusion monster in the pit, he duplicates and you get 10 clones or whatever. Killing that monster will also level up your thing. And again, there's different flavors of that depending on the lesser evil. So Undercity will have monsters who are infected who will shoot ghosts, and if they hit you, they steal your time. In the pit, we'll have a really cool one. A monster is infected and he constantly sheds maggots, and if you kill him, the maggot comes out and tries to infest you, and if he infests you, you start shedding maggots, right? And then Azodan is a fun one. He creates this crazy fire stuff, so it'll be cool.
Only in Diablo are we shedding maggots. Oh, God.
Yeah, speak for yourself.
Oh, God.
So if I really like Helltide, that means that the more I'm playing Helltide, the more I'm leveling up my Helltide-related divine gifts, and therefore the more rewarding Helltide becomes.
It is 100% correct, yep.
Now, these boons, do you see this as something that we're going to be swapping out based on what activity we're doing?
So you wouldn't be swapping them out. Our goal is not to have you hop swapping these things. I think that's contrary to player flow and breaks you out of it and kind of just sucks. So our goal is only to swap it to maximize the rewards that you want. So you find yourself, man, I really need obols, right? I'm going to just rearrange these to maximize my obol intake from Undercity, or man, I really need boss keys, so I'm going to go do or layer boss keys. So I'm going to move these things around. For your truly seasons player, that's probably the only decision they're thinking about, because they know it all and they can handle that extra difficulty. But for players who are not opting into that difficulty, it becomes a decision of, okay, what reward do I want, as well as what passive stat boost or what slight buff do I want to make my character stronger. And that's what I'll slot into the purified slots, and that's what they're engaged with that content.
So you mentioned that these boons do also come with some form of defensive or utility buff, right?
Yep, that is correct. So only if you slot them in the purified one. So it becomes the decision of, okay, which boost do I want to my character, and then which negative effect do I want to unleash? Because depending on which one you slot in, it's a different negative effect. Do I want all maggots when they hit me to steal potions, or do I want every 45 seconds a mini Duriel pops up to kick my ass, right? That's the kind of decision you got to make. What level of difficulty are you comfortable with, as well as what reward do you want, or what's the passive boost you want.
So for the last several seasons, few seasons, we've had seasonal powers. I guess if you want to stretch the definition, you can argue that these are powers as well, but they're clearly very different. Did you take a different approach to designing powers? Has people have memed on powers. Has that had any effect on how you view powers and want to implement powers in the future?
Yeah, I was certainly influenced by how folks reacted to previous seasons and how those powers were, the feedback we got on them. And it's a versatile system, and we wanted to see how far we can push it and see which ways we can change player builds and sort of how they engage with the content. It's a really great system because it allows us to create more seasonal specific approaches to things that are fresh rather than just, okay, here's something slightly different. So we're trying to get away in this season from the stuff we've done in the past. Here's the new cool badass attack. Like, none of these things are going to... No angel's going to descend from heaven and blast the hell out of Duriel or something. It's just not going to happen. It's totally passive. So yeah, it's going to use a similar interface, but it's not seasonal powers. It's seasonal gifts. It's a totally different system. And in terms of your question about sort of the future, to me, who knows which season I'll be in charge of, but to me, it's just another tool in the toolkit, a tool that we can use to increase content variety, increase player build variety, reward variety, and there's so many different avenues that we can take it. And this is just one avenue, and it's sort of exploring customizing your rewards and customizing your difficulty, but I can think of 100 different ways that we could use the same system to create all sorts of fun and interesting things.
Yeah, I'd love to add on to this and say that we've definitely seen that. I think like a big takeaway we've had is that people would like to see more variety in the kind of things that are happening in seasons. And really what I think we're trying to move towards is building an arsenal, like a toolkit of different cool stuff that we can do that all feels very different, so that we can mix it up much more significantly than we have in the past, season over season.
So if we're looking at a season and we're designing what's going to be included in a season, what do we feel are the necessary ingredients to having a successful season?
That's a great question. I mean, it kind of varies. We do try to take liberties. We try not to limit ourselves to like a very specific recipe. But as you have probably noticed, season over season, we love our currencies. We love the seasonal menu. We love having some kind of either new activity or an activity mix-up of some kind. And, in Season 11, we're seeing that in the way that the Lesser Evils are kind of transforming all these different activities. And so we really want people to have something iconic to see immediately when they look at a season and be like, oh, yeah, like that's what's happening this season. And we also want people to be able to feel it in their build somehow. And, I think that that's probably where Sanctification comes in Season 11, is that's how you're feeling this season in your build.
Yeah, when I sort of think about ingredients for a good season and how I approach it is, simply put, variety, but different flavors of that. 3 specific categories. One, build variety, right, is so important. We go the zero to hero journey, and how we build that character is so important, and the decisions that we make along the way are so important. So the more we could do in a given season to alter how folks craft their builds, the better. And that takes the form of seasonal powers, or in this case the seasonal gifts. If we look at items, Chaos Armor is super well received, right? How we engage to create that awesome build. the next piece of variety we look at is content variety, and that's the lesser evil takeover. What's something new to do along my journey? And in this case, season 10, it was Infernal Hordes, and in this case, it's updating a bunch of different activities, new world boss, pit's different, Undercity's different. So providing new content that makes that journey more meaningful. And then lastly, I don't know if a good word for this, but I'm calling it showcase variety. Is like I go from 0 to hero, and when I get to hero, I want to show off how badass that hero is. So this is our end game content, this ultimate challenge that players can take part in, right? And we haven't talked about it yet here, but in season 11, that is a new feature that we're calling the Tower, and that is going to be the ultimate showcase because it's showing off, coming with leaderboards for that thing. This is my, I got to the hero status. Now let's show the whole world how freaking awesome I am by getting to the top of that leaderboard. And will most of us get there? Absolutely not. But I'm sure some streamer somewhere will live at number 1, and it'll be pretty cool to see the build that they have and how they got there. So a really exciting feature that I'm sure we're probably going to talk about soon.
Let's get right to it. I mean, so we've we're reworking defenses, monsters are getting challenging, and all this is kind of leading into now the introduction of, I guess, the most competitive activity that we've had in the game so far, the introduction of the Tower. What is the Tower?
Yeah, so the Tower is going to be an activity that basically tests your total mastery of Diablo 4. You're going to have all these new itemization changes in Season 11. There's going to be all these wonderful monster updates. And this is going to be the place you go to really test how far your character has come, from that 0 to hero, as you were saying, Owen, and really put it to the test. So the Tower is a kind of a black box of a bunch of different things that could happen. And it's going to be up to you to understand the different possibility spaces and then utilize them to the best of your ability. So, for example, there are going to be a certain number of pylons that are going to spawn in the Tower. And it's going to be up to you to decide when is the best time to use them. Because, for example, in the Tower, monsters are going to follow you. So you're going to be able to kind of herd them around, and if you find a pylon that's going to give you a big buff, but maybe there's not enough monsters around it, you can be clever about that and be like, okay, I need to go round up a big group of guys and bring them back here and then blast them, because that's going to give me a ton of progress. And there's a lot of different situations that can kind of emergently occur like that in the Tower, and it's up to you to determine how you can best utilize it. And that's really where the skill expression comes in the Tower. There's going to be a ton of variety, but there's also going to be quite a bit of consistency. So you'll start to see patterns emerge as you run the Tower over and over and over again. And so as you continue playing through it, you're going to get better and better and better at dealing with the different situations it throws at you. And yes, it will have a leaderboard affiliated with it, so you are going to be able to show off just how much better you're getting and compete against your friends and players across the world.
And then these leaderboards, is it going to be cross-platform? Are we going to be able to filter it in different ways?
Yeah, so they are going to be cross-platform. All players from across all different platforms are going to be represented on this unified leaderboard, but you will be able to filter by platform if you'd like to see all players on PC or whatnot. And you can also filter by your friends if you want to, show off that you're the best among your friend group or whatnot.
And right now it's entering the game as a beta feature. What does that mean?
Yeah, so the Tower is something that requires a lot of rigorous iteration to reach the truest form that really gives players the ability to express that total mastery over Diablo in the sharpest way possible. And so we really want to release this as under the moniker as a beta because we want people to go in and really give us chunky feedback about how it feels down to the minutia, so that we can continue to iterate on it season over season and turn it into the best version of itself it can possibly be, so that we can all have a lot of faith in the integrity that the leaderboard actually provides. And when you see someone at a certain rank, you can be like, yeah, we trust the Tower, we trust the leaderboards, we know that this person deserves to be, number 1 or whatever, because the Tower has been rigorously tested in its best form possible. So that's why we want to start with it as a beta, because we want to acknowledge that there's going to be some extra work we want to do, and we want to get a lot of feedback from folks on how it can become better.
And ultimately, do you see the tower as something that is really just geared for like competitive players, those gunning for the top 100 or top 1,000? Or do you see this also appealing to just more, people who don't have the time to ever make it into the top 1,000?
Yeah, we totally acknowledge that, not everyone's going to be able to get into the top 100 or number one player or whatever. And we want to make sure that this is a really fun activity for everyone. So at a future time, there will be, rewards affiliated with the tower, really cool stuff that you can earn. We are holding off on that for now because we do want to make sure that it's in its best state possible before we start granting those to people.
One thing I'd like to call out as a difference between the tower and the pit is that with the tower, we really want to encourage you to only push, right? It's not an activity that we want you to repeat the same floor over and over like you do with the pit because you're grinding glyph ranks or whatever. So we really want to incentivize players for just making forward progress in the tower.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, what would be in the tower would probably be like one-time rewards. So it would be incentivizing you to be like, okay, can you now reach 60? Can you now reach 65? Whatever. So yeah, typically speaking, you would probably only be running the tower to go further. Or, like if you feel like you're on the cusp of being able to get to 60, maybe you try it a few more times because you're that close.
Okay, so it's not designed as something that we're going to farm in any way.
No, that's going to be for the pit, and that's a big reason why that's one of the big reasons why we want to separate out the pit and the tower.
I guess we can talk more about those reasons, because I know, people have been asking for leaderboards now since day one, and as soon as you guys added the pit, they're like, why can't you just put a leaderboard on the pit? Like, it's right there. So why did it take another, year and a half to get another activity just for leaderboards?
Yeah, so in the last year or so, we've seen a lot of upheaval. We were talking about this earlier, and of course, there's tons of things that are changing in Season 11. And so the game had been changing so rapidly that we felt that those leaderboards might not actually reflect, they would just change so constantly that it might not actually be a good representation of player skill or, from one season to the next, it would just be so different as to kind of lose meaning. And so we feel that with Season 11, we're kind of reaching a state where we're going to have a lot more confidence going forward in having leaderboards in the game. And we have a lot of confidence in the tower as an activity that supports leaderboards exceptionally well. Whereas the pit really is taking a role as the speed farming location. And that's not necessarily a place where you would want a leaderboard. And now with the tower, because we have that, that's going to take the full spotlight in terms of this is where you'll be competing for a leaderboard.
Yeah, to just chime in, I think the pit is very good at sort of build checking and stat checking and seeing, okay, how can I optimize this build? But the tower is very good at skill checking of how good a player am I at this action RPG. So it's not just as simple as get the strongest character. Aeson was talking about earlier, how well can I group these monsters? How well can I strategically use these shrines? And it just unwraps a whole nother level of skill that is more interesting, at least to me, in terms of what a leaderboard means. I think it's more interesting to see it that way than it is who can use Excel to get the best and who can grind the best gear forever. You know what I mean? So I just think tower is going to be the pinnacle example of leaderboard activity.
And you've hit a couple times upon the pylons and the sort of the kiting grouping monsters. These are tactics that I remember all the top players in Diablo 3 talking about with Greater Rift pushing for their leaderboard positions. Was the tower inspired by Diablo 3 pit pushing? Were there any lessons learned from Diablo 3's leaderboards that you wanted to, either any mistakes you don't want to repeat in D4 or anything carried over there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. When you get in and try it out yourself, you will definitely see that the tower was heavily inspired by Greater Rifts. It was an excellent system, and it's something we wanted to take and iterate on because we know people loved it, we loved it, but we did feel like there was room for improvement. I think a good example is the concept of fishing, fishing for the right pylons to find, or the right monster families, or the floor, or whatever. We've taken a lot of pains to make fishing less important, but we haven't gone so far as to remove it entirely. Because we actually found that when we removed fishing entirely, people kind of hated it because they wanted to have some degree of variety. Like if you totally take out RNG from an ARPG, it kind of kills off one of the core things to what we find to be the spirit of what makes ARPGs. And so there's still a degree of randomness, but again, going back to the concept of like really what we want to embody in the tower is when RNG occurs, you have a way to control it. You have a way to manipulate it in your favor. And that is a huge like guiding light that we took to heart when we were making the tower. Anytime RNG could happen, we want the player to have an answer to it. We want the player to be able to look at what occurred and respond accordingly, and that will improve their run. Because that kind of RNG, when you execute it really well, will reflect in the leaderboard, and it just feels really good. Because you've been playing the game for such a long time, and being able to show that off is just, it's exquisite.
Will there be a cost to opening the tower or to closing it after like 10 seconds, like poking your head in and fishing? Is there like any system to try to dissuade fishing or...
No, there's no cost to the tower, and there's nothing to try and dissuade you from poking your head in. But the thing is that you don't actually see everything that is going to occur in that tower run immediately. Like different floors are going to have different monster groups. You don't know exactly when these 3 different pylons are going to spawn, so you're not actually going to have the knowledge you need to like effectively judge a run. And so you can't exactly just walk in and be like, what's around me? Oh, I'm out, because now I know everything about what's going to happen, and this isn't a good run. You are going to need to push further in, and you'll see things emerge as they come, and then you'll need to respond to it.
So the pit is limited to 2 floors. Is the tower limited to more than 2, or is there any limit?
Yeah, the tower has 5 floors, and that is a part of the kind of skill expression that we want people to be able to experience in the tower. We want you to be able to skip a certain amount of content in the tower. Like for example, if you do run into a floor where there's maybe like an unfavorable combination of monsters or whatever that you don't feel your build is really super good at dealing with, yeah, you can probably run through that. But you can only skip a certain amount of stuff in the tower, and that's actually why we've explicitly set it to 5 floors. Is we do want to kind of like force you to accept conditions at a certain point, so you have some space to be like, let's re-roll this, let's like re-roll that or whatnot. But you can't do that infinitely. You can't just keep going until you find something that you can just like blast instantaneously and get all your progress. And as to the pit being 2 floors, that's something that we're open to potentially changing. We didn't want to make like super fundamental changes to the pit right off the bat based on the tower, because it is a beta. And we acknowledge that, it's something that people, like, we want to hear people's feedback about. And if it's, if 5 floors are received super positively, or if various elements of the tower are received super positively and they could potentially be applied to the pit, that's something we're going to be taking a look at for sure.
All right, then another big change coming is season ranks replacing the season journey, right? We're reintroducing capstone dungeons, which I always thought they were a cool feature, and I was kind of sad. It's like, oh, like this is the cool content, and now I can't play it anymore. So they're being brought back. More are being brought back. Some are going to be seasonal content that rotates every season, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So I guess, do you want to go over more details about exactly what this change means to the day-to-day of players in the start of a new season?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the biggest 2 things you'll notice is, you already said the first one, which is capstones, which is awesome. I'm super excited for capstones to come back as well. The cool vibes that you got from capstones before are going to be there again, in the sense that it's going to be a really cool milestone for you to experience and kind of test your build season over season. You might be able to beat the first capstone at level 30 in season 11. Maybe you can beat it at level 20 in season 12 if you do something like crazy and your build is super powerful earlier or whatnot. So you can kind of reflect on how you're getting better at the game season over season, which is cool. The other thing is that previously in the season journey, you needed to complete X out of Y objectives in any given chapter, and that's how you advanced to the next chapter. That is no longer the case in the season rank system. You have to complete the capstone objective, which for the first 5 ranks are fully fledged capstone dungeons that you have to crawl through. Once you complete those capstone dungeons, or rather just the capstone objective of that rank, you now have access to all the objectives and the capstone dungeon of the next rank. And these capstones are going to become higher and higher level as you go. They are not bound to your player level or difficulty. So for example, the first capstone dungeon, at least in PTR, is set to monster level 30. You can walk into this capstone when you're level 1. If you feel like you could somehow overcome it when you're level 1, go get him, Slugger. Yeah, you
will
won't.
die.
You'll die. But if you somehow break the game and do it at level 1 or 5 or 10 or whatever, you now have access to rank 2 and the next capstone. So if you can continue to do that at a significantly lower level than the capstone dungeon, you can continue to climb through the ranks at your own pace. And that's kind of the heart of what I'm trying to get at here, is that a huge guiding light of this change is that you can participate and experience season ranks totally at your own pace. If you're like a crazy streamer that goes insanely fast, no longer do you have to go off the beaten path and do like all these different objectives to advance. You can just go from capstone to capstone to capstone and get through all of it, which is pretty sick. If you'd rather take it slow and like maybe out level it a bit and be a little more comfortable as you're going into the capstones, you can totally do that too. But yeah, so it's really just about experiencing season ranks how you'd like. And then beyond that, we're still going to have like a lot of objectives, like actually more objectives than we've previously had in the season journey. And a big part of that is because we have a lot more freedom, because you no longer have to complete X out of Y. These are bonus objectives now. So we can add a lot of cool stuff that gives you, little micro rewards as you're going through the game. And so if you're like a completionist and you love to just like check all the boxes, there's going to be like a dense amount of stuff for you to do in Season 11 in the season rank system.
And this comes with a complete overhaul of Renown. We're not going to be starting level 1 with all those skill points anymore, are we?
No, we're not. Gone are the days of starting with 14 skill points when I'm level 1 and just immediately blasting everything. This is another part of how we'd really like you to experience the flow of the game alongside all of these changes that are coming in Season 11, like player defense and monsters. And you're gonna have to have a little bit more intentionality to re-earning those skill points in the seasonal realm. It's going to be through the season rank system. There are going to be some bonus objectives that are typically like very much so on the critical path that will grant you skill points. And what I mean by critical path is like, reach reputation rank whatever. Something that you were probably going to do anyways, and that might give you a skill point. Or go kill a world boss. Why not go take out Asmodan once, the new guy that's going to be in Season 11? That will give you a skill point. And then a lot of other different micro objectives that ask you to do various things. You're also going to earn a skill point, at least in the first 3 ranks when you beat capstone dungeons. That's going to be a really nice, cherry on top that you can use to progress further and faster. We think that having these skill points spread out across the early game a little bit more is really satisfying. It's really satisfying to earn them. It's also very satisfying to earn them in the context of like, how close can I get to beating the next capstone? Like, how early can I do that in my journey? And getting those skill points from the different objectives is kind of a part of that calculus that you're making to speed through it as quickly as possible.
So just to clarify for everyone, both with regards to the Paragon points and skill points, we're not seeing a reduction. We're not like being robbed of any. It's just now we have to re-earn them through specific discrete goals while playing the game. As opposed to like, originally we earned them by doing these sort of ephemeral renown, explore an area, click on various things. Now it's more concrete steps of like, oh, if I fight that world boss, I get a skill point kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Yes, you're not losing any skill points or any Paragon points. You're going to have the same amount. And I'm glad you brought up altars, because another part of this change is we don't want to have to ask new players that come in late, like if you started playing now, to be like, oh, to start playing the game, you have to go run around and get a bunch of random stuff. We wanted that to be a little bit more natural in the seasonal realm. So this is accomplishing that too.
And just to clarify, these renown changes are strictly for the seasonal realm. The system will still exist on Eternal
Yes.
for Eternal players, but for the seasonal realm, it's been basically replaced by season ranks. And like you mentioned, those Paragon points and those skill points have been redistributed from renown into the season ranks system on the seasonal realm only.
Yes.
We've got as well new items, new uniques coming for every class, right? I guess let's go in turn. What is each of you? What is your favorite new unique coming in season 11?
I'll go first. I'll say item called Grave Bloom. I think it's a one-handed mace, but it's for necros, and it allows you to get 3 little golems instead of 1 big one. And I know that's silly, but I just love the idea of like 3 little golems running around and fighting for me. So I'm really excited for that one.
I mean, that sounds very familiar to Diablo 3 players, right?
Yep.
Oh man, you stole mine, Owen. I saw the Grave Bloom too, and I was like, oh, it's so cute. Suddenly these golems go from like a gross, maggot shedding freak to these little cuties that are following me around. But I would have to say the next one I would pick is the chain scourged nail. I think I said that right, for the barbarian. It's very interesting because you can kind of utilize it in a lot of different ways. You can put 1 brawling skill on your bar and then it just kind of resets over and over, or you can have like an arsenal of brawling skills and then kind of cycle through them. That's not really a playstyle I think we've seen with the barbarian before, and it really makes me think about brawling skills in like a totally different way. So I'm pretty excited to try out a piano brawling barbarian where I just slam keyboard cat slam my keys one after another and then do it again.
I think this is something we're seeing maybe from a couple of the new items is affixes that are like based on what you have on your skill bar.
Yeah, I think it allows for like a lot of really interesting approaches because it doesn't like force you or pigeonhole you into a specific way to handle it. You can go as little or as deep into it as you want, and it kind of scales to you in that way, which really kind of blows open how Buildcraft works. And so I personally really like that approach because I can combine it in so many more ways than if it's specifically called out like 1 skill, for example.
Yeah, that's actually also why I really like the new Sork unique, which gives you the enchantment for every defensive skill you don't have on your bar, which is really cool. It's actually, I think, like the anti-piano, whereas normally I'm pianoing on my Sork. This is like, I don't have the piano because I just have the enchantment. I think it's a really cool kind of play on the possibility space of how you build your Sork, right? And so, yeah, I really like this, that unique.
And it's a great way to tackle the, basically since Sorcerer released, we're always just having the same, 2-3 defensive skills all the time. So it's a good way to try to shake up that meta.
Yeah, I think that's something that the that class team is constantly looking at is like how people are playing and then finding ways to like turn that on its head. Give you reasons and incentives to turn that on its head, which is cool. It adds a lot more build variety to the game.
Moving on to some more, I guess, general questions here, not necessarily specific to what we've covered today, but Season 10. It seems like Season 10 is being pretty well received by the community. Like I'm seeing a lot of people say it's amongst their favorite seasons. Why do you folks think that is? What lesson is there to take away from Season 10?
Yeah, so I think Season 10 does a couple of really interesting things. Number one, it's really the first big shakeup to the itemization meta since Season 4, right? Like Chaos Armor is pretty awesome, it's pretty powerful, and it can really change the way you think about your build and how you're building it, right? So I think that's the first thing. It's been really successful. The other thing that to me it really sticks out as being very successful about Season 10 is that there's, you really feel like there's a wide variety of activities that are worth doing in Season 11. I found that a lot of earlier seasons you've kind of naturally gravitated towards Layer Boss Jail, whereas Season 10 doesn't feel like you're imprisoned in Layer Boss Jail so much.
Yeah, that was what I was going to talk about too, and that's something we took to heart for Season 11 is there's now just multiple avenues to get, those uniques that you normally just get from the layer boss. Now there's a bunch of different ways that you can get that without even engaging in that system at all. So I think that's just allows the players to, again, experience the content they like and not feel pigeonholed into doing just this one thing because that's the only way to get the thing that they want.
Yeah, I think that's something that we're going to be leaning into more and more, or at least doing our best to lean into more and more season over season, is ensuring that there are reasons to just go to as many different activities as possible. I think really, at least for me personally, something that really starts to make me like ask the question, why am I still playing this season, is when I realize that like the best thing that I could be doing is like one thing over and over and over and over again. And then when I'm on like run 100 of that or whatever, I'm just like, do I want to keep doing this? I've done this 100 times, you know? Like, I love to grind, but I want to like move from A to B to C to A to B to C over and over. Like, that just keeps it fresh. It keeps it a lot more interesting. And so having really good reasons to do all of these different really cool things that are in Diablo 4, I think is in everyone's best interest.
Now, on the topic of the Chaos Armor, Bartek. Without Chaos Armor, what role will Bartek be playing going forward, since he's permanently in the game?
Yeah, so for Bartek, I think I mentioned it earlier, but he's going to be your guarantee. He's going to be one of the guaranteed sources of Neath Iron, which is a current material we're bringing back, specifically used for resetting Masterworking. So if you're, chasing perfect hits on all of your items for Masterworking, you're going to want to be doing Bartek to get Neath Iron. He's also the best source of Scrolls of Restoration, which you'll be using to try and hit your perfect rolls on tempers. And for the season, he's also a guaranteed source of Heavenly Sigils, so you'll be wanting to do that as well.
So Season 11 bringing a lot of changes. If we're looking towards the future of the game, what do you folks feel is most needed after Season 11? What does D4 need the most in Season 12 and beyond?
I will say we're cooking a lot of really exciting stuff. So there are things that we are aware of and that we're working very, very hard on that we're going to showcase soon. And I know everyone here is really excited about it. So not to spoil that. But if I had my magic wand, I could add anything. Assassin class from D2. That's what the game needs. Because trap assassins are awesome and I miss them.
Trapsin was real fun.
Right?
Does everyone actually want to go ahead and answer if you had a magic wand? Okay, and you can instantly add something to the game with 0 effort. We got Owens. How about the rest of you?
Oh man, Trapsin's pretty cool, but I think I definitely have to go with Amazon. I mean, I gotta love my Jamazon. Throwing lightning furies and clearing whole screens of stuff.
Okay. I'll continue the trend. So, Monk was my favorite class in the Diablo franchise.
Nice.
I absolutely love Monk. I have it, I would say 80% with Spiritborn, so I'm pretty happy. But I don't know, there's just something about punching across the screen and literally just, I don't know, the monk, they're just sweet, dude. I love the monk so much.
So no love for Paladin. Gotcha. Okay. So of all the changes that you guys have made to the game over time, what has been the most challenging to address and why?
I'll hop in first with just talking about the evolved monster combat. Evaluating every single monster in the game is extremely difficult. Just looking at every one of their behaviors, every single one of their animations, and just tuning the frames that they do XYZ took a lot of effort, and I'll give huge props to the Encounter team for all the work they did on that, as well as the other teams, VFX teams, all the folks that supported that. It took a whole hell of a lot of work and just making sure that sort of our philosophy, all monster families are equal in terms of their difficulty, but all monster families are unique, is very took a lot of work, and they should be very proud of that. And I think you'll notice the fruits of that labor. So for us, that was a huge effort that we spent a lot of time on.
On the system side of things, adding a whole new power system like Sanctification is pretty difficult. Like I mentioned earlier, systems are really like a giant tangled spider web of things, and you pull at one thread and you have no idea what you'll necessarily unravel. So doing that and updating tempering and masterworking while kind of making sure that the kind of the sanctity of the game is preserved was a pretty monumental task. Also, huge props to the systems team and everybody else that was involved with that.
Yeah, I think just to add on to that, because I guess, I'm a systems designer, so every problem is a nail or whatever. But whenever you change a system, especially in a game like Diablo 4, you have to take into consideration effectively every other system that exists. Like they all just have to exist together in harmony. And so because of like the great deal of things that are changing in season 11, and with all the things that we keep track of going forward as well, we have to harmonize all of that constantly. And that's, like Art was saying, a monumental lift from Art, from myself, from the rest of the systems team, and so many other teams too, because people need to be apprised and aware of how the game is changing. And I think something that people probably don't often think about when it comes to game development, but like when we were working on season 11, everyone has to work on these things in tandem. Like we all have to be working on monster combat or season ranks or the tower or all the different itemization changes at the same time. And not everything is implemented at the same time, right? And so when you're trying to evaluate the context of like how hard is monster combat, you might not actually have everything ready for like how defenses are changing or how itemization is changing. And so you kind of have to like put on your like future goggles sometimes when you're like playtesting or whatnot, and just be like, well, you have to think about this is like how this is going to exist. And so when you're in the early stages of development or even the middle stages of development, that can be a great challenge, and everyone has to like be very aware ambiently of everything that's happening so that we can all understand the context properly and give feedback and make sure that it all lands at the same time perfectly, which is like just props to the team for being able to handle that and the logistics of it, which is a big reason why we have producers. So yeah.
On the topic of that tangled web, this might tie into it. Prior to release, there were talks about set items. Joe Shelley and Rod Ferguson were mentioning that sets were something that would come after release. They wanted to make sure that they were implemented well. We haven't really heard anything about sets in a while. Has it been decided that they just don't fit into D4, or are they still potentially on the table?
We're still definitely evaluating. We know that they were super popular, and like they're super fun to try and collect the thing and kind of see how you can piece together the parts of the set you need with the rest of your itemization puzzle. We're still kind of figuring out how we want to tackle it, because we know there's some problems with the D3's sets and how kind of they warped the meta that we want to avoid if we were to go and introduce sets into Diablo 4.
Fair enough. The Dark Citadel. Are there any plans for more raid-like content to come into the game? Any plans for changes to the Dark Citadel? Are you guys just happy with where the Dark Citadel exists right now in D4?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. When I think about the Dark Citadel, my wife is a librarian. She has the expression, a book for every reader and a reader, a reader for every book. And I think of that like in terms of activities that we have in our game, where certain activities, there's a player for every activity and an activity for every player, and not all activities appeal to all players, and that's totally fine, right? I think if we did that, the game would be very homogenous, not very interesting. So where it landed is incredibly awesome experience that is highly engaging for people who are interested in that type of content, who want to go in and do more deliberate combat with puzzles and all this really awesome stuff. So I encourage everybody to go check it out. It landed in a terrific spot. That said, we don't have anything in the works that we're ready to announce about any sort of additions to the Dark Citadel, but I would encourage folks to play it.
Now, the Dark Citadel added some like pretty cool mechanics into the game. Are we going to see those potentially like in Capstone dungeons or any other content?
I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by some things you find in Capstone dungeons. I don't want to give it all away. I want you to go play them and experience for yourself, but there's some really fun stuff in those dungeons, right? Mason might have more info, but...
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to spoil the surprise too much. You'll certainly get to try them out in PTR and in Season 11 proper and beyond. But definitely, the team did a lot of great stuff in the Dark Citadel and learned a lot from the Dark Citadel, and there's a lot there that we really like. And yeah, it may to some degree have influenced Capstones. So let us know what you think.
All right. On the topic of seasonal events, like seasons like Halloween and Midwinter Blight, what are your thoughts on what makes a good seasonal event?
Ooh, I have a good one for Halloween.
Ooh.
Overland Butcher, Headless Horseman, who hunts down players. And if you get killed by him, he permanently changes your head to a pumpkin. Ship it. You're welcome.
Permanently.
Here all week. That's why they pay me the big bucks.
Well, how can I follow that up? I just need to quit my job now.
No, you don't need to quit your job. You need to get to it, Art.
Yeah, that's right. All right,
Wrap it up, son.
let's
What
go.
are you doing?
No, I think there's a lot of ways to approach seasonal events. We've tried a lot of ways to approach seasonal events. I think something we kind of try to do is we kind of think of events right now in two different categories. One is more like a booster. It doesn't have a lot of specific things that are changing necessarily about the experience. It's boosting an activity or like a segment of the economy. Like for example, the Whisper event, where you're getting more caches and whatnot. That's not necessarily like adding something like visually new to the game. It's just kind of changing how you might be playing it. And then the other is more like a flagship event, where we do have like differences in gameplay, and maybe there's some extra stuff like potentially a rep board or whatnot, and that would look more like March of the Goblins. And I think we're really trying to continue iterating on both of those. We want to have a good kind of cadence of both boosters and flagship events that people can play, and that are happening fairly consistently, just to keep the game as fresh as possible. And really, I think where like people's heads will probably gravitate to when they think about like what they would love to see an event be is probably more like the flagships, because they are just so much more visual and they're going to have a lot more going on with them. And we're definitely very interested in exploring more of what like more flagship events and beefing them up to the best of our ability to be chunkier and more exciting and make you more excited to log in, I suppose.
All right, another topic that the community, or some people bring up a lot, is endgame. You see people repeat, like, when are they going to add endgame, or when are they going to add more endgame, or true or real endgame? And how do you interpret what that question even means? Like, what does it mean to you when they say that?
Yeah, I mean, that's Diablo 4 is no endgame. Love that meme. No, really, I think when I really kind of internalize that feedback, I think what bubbles up to me is that players are feeling a lack of context to their endgame, and they're lacking kind of endpoints, right? And what I mean by that is that like there isn't really any like, why am I doing these activities? Okay, sure, I'm doing the pit because I need glyph experience, and I'm doing this activity for that reward reason and for that. But like, why am I actually doing these activities? Is there there's no like larger kind of system driving that, and there's not really very many great goals for you to try and like build towards and test yourself against, right? We have climbing the pit tiers, and then we have Uber Lilith, and that's kind of it. And so I think creating greater context and creating more challenges for the player to test themselves against is going to go a long way to kind of making that end game for Diablo 4. And I think that some of the changes in Season 11, and especially with the tower, are kind of some major steps that we're taking towards that.
So this is something you guys are actively working towards?
Yeah, I mean, we're discussing and talking about things like this constantly, so...
Yeah, I mean, I think Art put it really well when he said that a lot of it is about goals. I think different people will give you wildly different answers about what can you define as, oh, I have reached endgame? Because some people would say like, oh, when you enter Torment 1 for the first time, you're now in the end game. Other people would say, no, that's not end game. You're in the end game when you're in Torment 4 and you've like beaten everything or whatever. And really it's about giving people longer form goals. And I think that we saw that to some degree with Chaos Armor, for example, because there's so many different versions of Chaos Armor that you could find, and so being able to chase those is kind of a longer form goal. So that's another reason why I think people liked it. And Art, to your point, like I think the tower is going to be a place where people will be able to chase longer form, like internalized satisfaction, and the satisfaction of being able to show it off to their friends, just how far they've gone. And yeah, I think to the point of giving people more long-term goals to chase, that's definitely something we're very interested in. And I think Season 11 is hopefully a good example of that, and there will be more to come.
So meta progression is a term that some of us in the community have started to use when talking about certain kinds of endgame systems that are, not just advancing our own personal power, but progressing along some path of goals. Is adding some kind of layer of meta progression system anything that you guys are interested in doing?
Yeah, we're looking at a bunch of different ways that we can kind of contextualize your journey and what your goals might be in the end game, but we don't have anything concrete to talk about yet.
Fair enough. How do you folks see the relationship the game has with casual players versus blasters, and how, as designers, do you feel you can service both groups of players?
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in. I think that's kind of what makes Diablo 4 special, is its ability to cater to both of these groups, and both groups find enjoyment in the content that we have, and not to harp back to the previous example of books and readers and all that stuff, but I think there's offerings for everybody. And I think one of the big things about Season 11 is the changes that we're putting in are not just like, this is for blasters and this is for base, people who don't blast. Like, all the improvements to all the systems are for everyone, and they can enjoy it equally. And I think that's one of the best things about Season 11.
Yeah, I think something we really try to take to heart at Blizzard is creating easy to learn and hard to master games. And I think that's represented in how a game can be approachable when like you start playing it for the first time. Like, if you go back in time to when you played the campaign for the first time, what were the tools available to you when you stepped out of the cavern in Kyovashad? Not really much. You didn't even have a skill, right? You just ran up to things and left-clicked them. You couldn't really do anything. And now if you compare that to, probably when you're 30 hours into Season 10, it's a very different experience. And so I think we really try to approach this from the sense of, like, at its very core, Diablo is a very simple game. There's not actually that much going on. But then when you dig deeper into every little minutia of how a skill works, how this item works, how this stat works, all these different things all combine to create something that does have a tremendous amount of depth and a tremendous amount of play too, and like a lot to sink your teeth into and experience and master over 100 hours or more. And so I think that that's really core to how we think about Diablo 4. And so, yes, to answer the question directly, I do think that we can appeal to blasters and casual players. I think that's what we strive to do in all the different systems that we create.
Yeah, absolutely. Not without its challenges, but I think one, like Owen mentioned, one of the things that I think sets Diablo 4 apart is kind of these scalable systems that work whether you're a more casual player or you're like hardcore bleeding edge blaster pushing 150s.
All right, so we got PTR that's going to be running from October 21st to 28th. That's 1 week, and a lot of stuff is changing in the game as we've just gone over. Is there anything in particular that you'd like to see folks focus their efforts on in testing on PTR?
Yeah, so from my end, I worked a lot on the season rank system, and a lot of that is encompassed in the level 1 to 60 zero to hero journey. So if you feel the impetus, if you have the kindness in your heart, please ignore Marak for a little bit and actually try going through the season journey and naturally trying out the capstones and experiencing kind of that new zero to hero experience that we have.
Yeah, for me, obviously, I've been harping on it the whole time, but Evolved Monster Combat, any feedback you have there, specifically around how the monsters feel, how combat feels in general, do you like the increase in difficulty, are you feeling memorable moments, the affixes, are there any like, oh, god damn it, this one again? Let us know. I'd love to hear it. Not all are going to be amazing to fight. We do want that healthy friction, but if there's some that you really grate your teeth against, I'd love to know that, and we can iterate it on.
For me, I mean, obviously, probably all the itemization stuff that we rework and all the new stuff. Just like, yeah, take a look at it, send feedback. Actually, also in the context of the leveling journey, would be super awesome. Like how you're building your character early game. Does the armor system, resistance system feel good? Like, does tempering? Like, do you actually care about using tempering, leveling up? All that stuff would be super useful as well if you can ignore Brack for a day or two.
Yes. And to finish this all off, we cannot forget, after you've ignored Mrak for a day or two, or however you want to approach it, go try out the tower. We want tons of feedback on the tower. We want to make the tower the sharpest version of itself that it can possibly be, that really feels like it puts the RNG in your hands to manipulate and do to the best of your ability. So if anything feels like there's randomness that's occurring that doesn't feel like you can address it in any way meaningfully and it doesn't feel great, let us know. Just let us know how the mode feels. Try it out.
All right, fantastic. We've covered a lot of ground today. I appreciate your time, and as a PSA to folks watching, right after this video ends, you can find these folks. These three are going to be on the Sanctuary Discord for a live Q&A. They'll be on voice. You could submit your questions and hear their answers if there's anything that wasn't covered in this video right here. But before we close, any last message any of you wanted to put out to the folks?
I just encourage you all to play the PTR and give as much feedback as you can, positive, negative. It's super, super helpful, and our goal is to iterate on what you see in that PTR and make Season 11 the biggest, best season that we could possibly have, and sort of blow your minds.
Yeah, what Owen said.
Yeah, try it all out. You know, we've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in Season 11. I cannot wait for you guys to get your hands on it. And we'll see you in the future, which is right now for you, but not for us, which is why it's the future. So, yeah.
All right, thanks so much.
Like and subscribe to Rhykker.
Yeah.
Tip jars.
My
available.
Venmo is.